Congressman.
How are you?
I'm well, thanks.
I'm great.
Good afternoon, everybody, or good evening, everybody. Thank you to everybody who's tuning in to our town hall this evening. I hope that soon enough we can begin doing town halls in person again. I know we'd all rather be together, but on the other hand, maybe this allows for some folks to participate and to listen in who might not be able to get to a town hall physically. So the purpose of tonight's town hall is to talk about the American Rescue Plan, the $1.9 trillion package that Congress passed and President Biden signed just a couple weeks ago. We are very, very fortunate to be joined this evening by Congressman Larson. And I'm going to have a few words to say about Congressman Larson and his leadership in a minute. But also thrilled to be joined by so many members of our city council and by our city treasurer. We have with us City Treasurer Adam Cloud, Councilwoman Shirley Surgeon, Councilman Nick LeBron, Councilman Jimmy Sanchez, Councilwoman Marilyn Rossetti, and Councilman John Gale, and we may be joined by a few others as we go on. Also grateful to Mary Sue, who's be providing ASL translation as we go. And we have Catherine Quesedo with us, who is a Spanish language translator. As we hit key points that we think are particularly important, we're gonna ask Catherine to translate, but I also want everybody to know if you have questions that you'd like to ask in Spanish, Catherine can translate those as well. Forgive me for not doing full simultaneous Spanish translation, but we're trying to balance accessibility and time. Because we I think we're booked for an hour, although we can go a little bit later than that. What I'd like to do tonight is begin just by sharing a little bit of information about where we are with the coronavirus in our community in general. Share about the transmission numbers we're seeing, where we stand, where things stand in the reopening, and the vaccination effort, and then to move into the conversation about the American Rescue Plan. I'm going to begin sharing a presentation in a minute, but one last comment on just kind of logistics before I do that. As we've tried to do with all these town halls, we know there are participating folks on many different platforms. We got folks who are on Zoom, we got folks who are looking on Facebook, we got folks who are watching at Hartford Public Access TV, and we're grateful to Hartford Public Access TV as well. If you want to submit questions, you can do it through Zoom, you can do it through Facebook Live, or you can email them to bronenoffice@hartford.gov, and my team here will make sure that we see those and try to get to all of your questions. We're also going to have the opportunity just for some good give and take with all the panelists here, because this is a joint effort. Mayor, City Council, Treasurer, our federal delegation, state delegation, all working together to make sure that we're doing the best we can for our community. So with that, I'm going to begin sharing this screen and presentation, and we will move on. So the first, can everybody see that?
Yep.
Okay, my apologies. So the first thing I just wanted to share is just to give a little bit of context on where we are with the virus in our community. As you know, we got hit hard in the spring, and we're actually coming up in 2 days on the anniversary of the first life lost in our community to the coronavirus. And nearly 300 of our fellow Hartford neighbors have lost their lives. And we're not out of the woods yet. We have to stay careful. We have to be cautious. We have to try to put this thing behind us as best we can. And while we've made progress, we still have to really be on our guard. If you see here, you can see that back in September, we were down at about 98 cases per week. That started to rise through the fall as we got to the holidays and the colder weather, and you started to see that surge. And then we began to see the declines again as vaccinations have rolled out. As of right now, for March, we've been averaging about 129 new cases per week. Again, far lower than we were in the fall, but still too many to let us let down our guard. And that's why we have to keep taking the basic steps. We've got to wear our masks. We've got to watch our distance from one another. We've got to keep away from big crowds if we can. And you've got to get tested still. If you have any reason to think you need to get tested, we still have one of the most accessible testing networks anywhere in the state and in the country. So please, if you need to get tested, do it. But the real way we're going to beat this thing is with the vaccines. And right now, everybody over 45 is eligible for that vaccine. And in just about 2 weeks, everyone over 16 will be eligible for that vaccine. And so please, as soon as you're eligible, do what you can to get that vaccine, and we're going to do whatever we can to help. There are a bunch of vaccination sites around the city right now. You've got vaccination sites at Parker Memorial Center, at South End Senior Wellness Center, at Xfinity Theater, at the Convention Center, at each of our 2 hospitals, at a number of the pharmacies around. Our health department's doing vaccinations at Coventry Street, and also, as you hopefully know, at Dunkin' Donuts Park on the weekends. And so there are a bunch of sites. Hopefully it's easy to get to, but if you don't have a car, we'll give you a ride. And if you need an appointment, the easiest way is to call us at the city, because we are focused on Hartford residents. And you can do that calling 877-918-2224, 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. every day. You can also, if you've got access to the internet, you can fill out a really simple vaccine interest form at hartfordct.gov. If you just fill out the basic information on that form, we will then call you and make sure that we help you get an appointment. We've got a bunch of folks now making phone calls, knocking on doors, doing whatever we can to reach everyone we can to help folks get an appointment. But if you are eligible, please call that number, go to the website, whatever you can do, we will help get you that vaccine. And let me just say, if you think that, you don't want it just yet, or it's, you're going to wait a little bit, please remember, just like wearing masks isn't about you, it's about all of us. It's about your community. It's about your loved ones, your coworkers. Same thing's true about vaccines. Even if you're not inclined to get it for you, get it for your family, get it for your neighborhood, get it for your community. This is how we will get past this. So I thought it was important to start with that, and happy to take any questions about that as we get into the discussion. But now, let's shift to the conversation about the other way that we move past this, and that is with the rescue plan, the American rescue plan that President Biden proposed, Democrats in Congress supported and got through. This is truly historic legislation. And I have some summary slides here to just give you a sense of some of the things that it does, but it is a truly historic piece of legislation that, again, the Democrats in Congress and President Biden got done because they knew the urgency of the moment and how much support we all need in every community across the country to begin getting past this. And we've been fortunate here in Hartford and in Connecticut to have a congressional delegation that has been leading that fight, and nobody has been leading that fight more tirelessly than Congressman John Larson. We are so fortunate to have John Larson as our congressman. He has been fighting for state and local assistance, for more resources for vaccinations, for more resources for housing stability, and we could go on and on and on about the things that Congressman Larson's been fighting for, all the way back to the HEROES Act, which the House of Representatives passed back almost a year ago now, 9 months ago, because Congressman Larson and his colleagues and our delegation in Connecticut recognized the need and fought for it. And I also just have to say personally how grateful I am that Congressman Larson always picks up the phone, always calls back quickly if he misses the call, and then always takes whatever input and feedback we've got at the local level here, doesn't just take it to heart, but turns it into action. And again, I just cannot say enough about how lucky we are. So with that, what I'm going to do is ask Congressman Larson to say a few words, and then we'll go into a quick summary about what the American Rescue Plan does, and then get to the issue of the local funds that are coming our way, and what we know about it, what we think we're allowed to do with it, and then begin having a conversation with you, with our community, about the best way to use those resources. So Congressman Larson, thanks so much for joining us, and over to you.
Well, thank you so much, Mayor Bronin. I know everybody on this call knows of your advocacy and the incredible amount of work and energy you bring to this task, and certainly, especially in a time of crisis like this pandemic. It's people like yourself, the council members and others who have demonstrated the ability to go above and beyond to make sure that their community is taken care of. And as importantly, that in Congress, people understand what people are going through and how they're dealing with this, both in their homes, in their community, and in their places of work. And I know that everybody on the call knows of your advocacy. And again, I can't thank you enough for your continued help and support, as does the entire Connecticut delegation. And let me give my colleagues, starting with our two United States senators, a shout out for their efforts, and our House delegation that we think is the strongest in the country and well positioned in terms of the leadership that we have in the various committees of appropriations, ways and means, defense, education, and international affairs. We couldn't be better represented. And I wanted to give Rosa DeLauro and Joe Courtney, Jim Himes, and Johanna Hayes the credit they richly deserve. We all pulled together as a team. And I say that with the great pride of knowing, and again, let me say, largely because of the efforts of your mayor. This guy can pick up a phone and call anyone across the country, and I probably believe around the globe, but was intimately aware of the legislation as it was being developed and was able, in a way that few can, understanding the nexus of policy and practicality and politics and what has to be done in putting a bill together. And the end result is that the city of Hartford will receiving $127 million, $92 million for the city of Hartford, and another, $127 million for K through 12 and $92 million for the city of Hartford. And that in large part is due to the mayor's effort, which makes that the largest amount of money that any city in the state has received. Thank you, Mayor Bronin, for your tireless advocacy. What I thought I'd do is try to explain briefly a lot of what's in the American Rescue Plan, and then get into some of the specifics. There's a lot to digest in this bill. There's a lot to go through, and I'm sure it will create a number of questions. And what we want to be able to continue to do is make sure that we're here to answer those questions, not only tonight, but questions that you might have where you can call upon our office or visit our website for help. The past year, as all of you know, has been extremely difficult for Americans and for people around the world. This is the worst pandemic that anyone has seen in 100 years. COVID-19 turned everything upside down and disrupted our lives. There's been an unbelievable strain on our hospitals, schools, and municipalities. Thankfully, that under the leadership of President Biden, help is on the way. And in just 62 days today, look at the results he's been able to produce. Congress has passed the American Rescue Plan. The legislation helps people who need it the most and is the most significant passed since the New Deal, especially in the way that it impacts people's lives. This sends most of the $1.9 trillion in funding directly to help Americans both get back on their feet so they can return to work in their normal lives. The rescue plan was signed into law on March the 11th, and as we like to say, puts shots in people's arms, money in people's pockets, kids back in the classroom, and provides relief, much needed relief for communities. President Biden, as I indicated, has been in office for a little more than 60 days, but we have been dealing with COVID crisis for more than a year. The response to the COVID crisis has shown in many respects what people value and also what the effort is needed. I was hopeful that this would be a bipartisan endeavor. Certainly, it has impacted the country in that manner because, as all of you know, this disease does not strike people on the basis of their political affiliation, or whether they're from a blue state or a red state, or whether they're Democrat, Republican, or unaffiliated, or family party. It strikes everyone, and so I commend again President Biden for taking the strong lead that he has, and for our colleagues on the other side to criticize, and primarily because they believe that too much was being spent. I find that rather appalling, inasmuch as that in 2017, the Republicans passed a $2 trillion tax cut that was unpaid for, where 83% of the tax cut went to the nation's wealthiest 1%. In stark contrast, this bill, the American Rescue Plan, helps average Americans, cuts child poverty in half, and is lifting over 30,000 kids in Connecticut alone out of poverty. The House took up several bills immediately in March of 2020 that were signed into law, many of them as certainly the Families First and CARES Act that were bipartisanly worked on together. But then, as the mayor has pointed out, we also passed the HEROES Act and wanted to expand and extend the benefits that were needed back to people in our districts, and then again in October. But it wasn't until December that we finally got additional money approved. And then President Biden took office and the American Rescue Plan was introduced. The Ways and Means Committee, on which I serve, crafted of the $1.9 trillion provisions totaling close to 1 trillion of that 1.9 trillion. Here's what it means for you, and I think it's best to break it down this way, and I'll try to go through all of this in as quick a fashion as I can so that we leave time for you to ask questions. But first, here's what it means for healthcare. For the first time, a $20 billion national vaccination plan goes into effect and does not leave states scrambling on their own for supplies and vaccines. We're very proud of this effort and glad to see that the monies are coming in, and especially hospitals like Hartford Hospital, the great job that they've done in reaching out to people and individuals, but also our community health center as well, who received an additional $7.6 billion so they can vaccinate and treat those who are the hardest to reach oftentimes. Funds for additional what we call PPE, or personal protective equipment, for first responders, healthcare workers. They come from different streams, but they are there for the use of our cities, towns, and of course our first responders. Funds for mobile vaccination units. We just sent a letter along with Congressman Himes, leading the support of the entire delegation, for 2 mobile vaccination vans to be utilized throughout the state of Connecticut. Nursing homes, who, as all of you know, and funding for the Department of Health and Human Services to get strike teams to be sent to nursing homes for quick reaction if infections are found, and funding for the infection control supplies, all of which over this course of this past year, we've all found are necessary and needed. The mental health funding to address mental health crisis that has been caused by COVID, and especially for children and teens. Senator Murphy was in the state just yesterday talking about a plan that he has for summer learning and training and catch up. And all of us are very much in tune of what we have to do in this area. Putting money back in people's pockets, a stimulus check, most of these checks should be received, should be by direct deposit, but $1,400 per person for those who need cash to, of course, buy the food for their children and to pay for their rent. And we were pleased to make sure that we argued in the delegation and me on the Ways and Means Committee. Initially, the limit was $50,000 and $100,000. We were able to change that, Mike Thompson and myself, to $75,000 per individual, $150,000 per family. That would make you eligible to receive funds. We also passed, and the mayor talked a little bit about this, but the dean of our delegation, or Deaness as I like to call her, is Rosa DeLauro. For 18 years, she's been working on a child care tax credit. We finally were able to push that through the Ways and Means Committee during this crisis. It totals $109 billion. 3,600 per child under age 6, 3,000 for child 6 and over. $119 billion to expand the earned income tax credit for working childless adults and seniors. Previously, they were not eligible for this, but again, because of advocacy like Mayor Bronin's and members of the council and Treasurer Cloud, we were able to make sure that this got in the bill as well. It extends a $300 federal supplement to state unemployment insurance until September for the 10 million unemployed because of this pandemic. Extends eligibility for the unemployed into September. 10,200 of unemployment benefits exempt from federal taxation. That's important. Again, 10,200 of unemployment benefits exempt from federal taxation. New housing programs, $125 million to help for the mortgage. That's in the process in the Treasury Department being set up. I just left a great little seminar that was put together and where we were talking about the impact of housing and that Brandon had put together in North Hartford that was beyond the scope of the state of Connecticut, but that was one of the key parts that we talked about, along with something the mayor often cites, which is the rental assistance of up to $10,000 for an individual for owned or going to be rented, and $1,500 for utility payments. $3.5 billion for a 15% automatic increase in supplemental nutrition assistance. Everybody's familiar with the SNAP program, but this additional money goes to make sure that food is getting into the mouths of those who, again, need it the most. Tax credit increase to reduce health insurance premiums on the ACA plans. You should see a reduction in premiums automatically if you're part of the Access Health Connecticut. And if you have any questions, please give us a call on that. 100% of healthcare premiums subsidized for free health insurance for the unemployed for 6 months if the employer offers COBRA continuation of benefits. That's another important thing that a number of people have called in about. 100% reimbursement for funeral expenses. We had this question that came up last night, and I wanted to make sure that I was correct about that, but 100% reimbursement for funeral expenses by FEMA for people who have passed on because of COVID. And also extends, and I know a number are interested in this, access to tax benefits for Puerto Rico and the territories previously discriminated against and were not granted. And so this provided us a great opportunity to make sure that they were treated rightfully as they should be, as every other American citizen is. Relief to the communities in terms of $1.1 billion for Connecticut schools. Hartford, as I indicated earlier, is going to get $127 million. A total of $4.3 billion in fiscal relief to the state of Connecticut and our municipalities, including $92 million that will go directly to the city of Hartford. In addition to a proportion, we no longer have county system governments, but a lot of states do. And so there was a county proportion as well that the city of Hartford will be eligible for. $28.6 billion for new grant programs for restaurant. This was new legislation. Again, Mayor Bronin was front and center, but so were a number of restaurants here, including Dino Chaldi right down the street from us at Peppercorns, who I think was glad to see this go through, including also an expanding of the Paycheck Protection Program to nonprofits and over $270 million to Connecticut in order to support child care providers and provide subsidies for families to afford care for the obvious reason, so that their parents can go back to work. $4.5 billion low-income energy and water assistance, and even assistance for the arts. COVID has turned us upside down. Our goal is to turn the state and our communities right side up. We need to hear from you if you've received relief or need help. Please. I know I kind of went through this rather quickly and hopefully covered the most salient points. But if you be assured you can call our office at 860-278-8888 or visit our website at larson.house.gov to learn more about what we can do for you, and never be afraid or ashamed to call. Put the call in so that we can provide the help. Again, I want to thank Mayor Bronin and the council members for holding this tonight and give us an opportunity to briefly run through everything that's in this bill. And I assure you that we stand prepared with our sleeves rolled up and ready to put our shoulder to the wheel to help you out in any way that I can. And with that, let me flip it back to you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you so much, Congressman. Thank you for going through that. It is a lot, but that's because this bill does an extraordinary amount. And we appreciate you highlighting many of the things that folks may not know as much about. It is going to be something that we need to do as a city and as a community to make sure that everybody knows what's in this bill, aside from the state and local funding, what's in this bill that can affect their personal lives. Some of it will come automatically, like those checks, but some of it you need to do some things to take advantage of it, like the rental assistance program. So we'll try to do whatever we can to get that word out. Congressman, thank you for the efforts you're making to get that word out, and thank you so much again for your tireless work on this and for being with us tonight. I'm going to begin sharing this presentation again, although Congressman Larson went through the next couple of slides here, including the $1,400 checks for individuals, the child tax credit, the funding for schools. One thing that I did just want to pause for 1 second on is this assistance for rent and utilities. We know that so many families in our community and communities around the state and country have had difficulty keeping up with the rent this year more than ever. And we have to make sure that as a country, and certainly here as a community, we don't see the health crisis and only to see an epidemic of evictions as those bills come due and the eviction protections roll off. So because of this bill that Congressman Larson just summarized, the state of Connecticut is able to create a program that offers up to $10,000 per household of assistance on rent that is due, and up to $1,500 per household on utilities that are due. I'm going to ask our translator to just translate that piece, because again, I want to make sure that anybody who's watching is aware of this piece in particular. Catherine, are you there? Catherine, I don't know if you're talking, but you may be on mute, or you are on mute if you're talking.
Tenemos asistencia para la renta y las utilidades. Entendemos que ha sido difícil para ustedes mantener, pagar su renta a tiempo. El estado de Connecticut está proveyendo hasta $10,000 por hogar y hasta $15,000 para pagar las utilidades. Si necesitan de esta asistencia, por favor, comuníquense con nosotros lo más pronto posible. Dame.
Great, thank you. And I also want to make sure folks know that in order to get more information about this rental assistance or to apply for this rental assistance, you can look up Unite CT on the ct.gov website. That's Unite CT on the ct.gov website, or you can call 844-864-8328. That's 844-864-8328. Catherine, would you mind translating that as well?
Si necesita aplicar, pueden ingresar a la página united.com con st.gov o llamar al 844-864-8328.
Thank you so much. So I just wanted to make sure that we give folks the information about that. And if you need more information, you can always reach out to my office and we'll do our best to help you get more. As the Congressman said, there's resources in there also for SNAP benefits, for a number of businesses in the city, like our theaters, for restaurants, a significant amount of money for restaurants, which is a huge thing because we know how hard our restaurants have been hit and how many folks jobs are tied to those restaurants. So that's a big deal too. But now I wanted to shift into the main purpose of this conversation, which is to talk about the funding that we're getting at the local level and the choices that we have to make together as elected leaders and together with you as a community. So as Congressman Larson said, we will be receiving three types of local assistance. The first type is the funding that's coming to the Hartford schools. That's $127 million that's coming directly to the Hartford Public Schools. And that is what is going to make it possible for the Hartford Public Schools to mount a multi-year massive effort to help our kids get back on track. We're not going to focus on those resources tonight because I know that the superintendent and the Board of Ed are having a separate town hall and community conversations about that. And as a mayor and council, we don't have direct authority over that. But it is important to know about those resources and about the fact that the purpose of those is to allow the school system to do whatever it can to help our kids catch up. That means dramatically expanded summer learning opportunities. That means expanded tutoring when we get to the new school year next year. It means perhaps extended day and extended year for some years to come. We know that this is not going to be a question of working for a couple of months to help our kids catch up. The last year has had such a huge impact on kids that we're going to be working for years. The school system is going to be working for years to help our kids catch up, heal, re-engage, reconnect, and get on track. So that's one bucket, is the $127 million that the Hartford Public Schools is getting. Then there is the $92 million the Congressman referenced that is coming directly to the city of Hartford. And that money can be spent between now and the end of 2024. So that's 3.5 years that we have to use these resources to help our city recover from this pandemic. It's worth, just to put it in context a little bit, it's worth thinking about if over 4 years, that $92 million, it's about $23 million a year. That represents, about 5% of our city budget. So it's worth thinking about the fact that even though it sounds like a huge amount of money, and it is, just when you think about the size of our overall budget, those resources over 4 years could go real fast. So we need to be really, really careful and strategic about how we spend these dollars to help our community recover in the best way. The funding has to be used to help us respond to and recover from the pandemic. We're going to be waiting for some specific guidance from the Treasury Department down in Washington on how we can use this funding. But we do know a few things. I mean, we know that it can be used to respond to help small businesses recover. We know it can be used to help address the health impact. We know it can be used to help address address community safety and deal with the spike in gun violence that we saw last fall. We know that the pandemic has just disrupted so many aspects of life. So those are some things we know. We also know that it can be used on certain types of infrastructure like water, sewer, and broadband. So we'll be taking a look at that. And then the Act says that it can be used to address the economic impact of the pandemic. This is really important because that's pretty broad language, but we don't know exactly what that means until the Treasury Department down in Washington gives us the guidance. So we're going to be looking carefully at that. That's a quick summary of how those funds can be used. And then, as the Congressman said, in addition to this $92 million, there's also an allocation that at some point we expect to be getting through the state as part of the county funding, since Connecticut doesn't have counties. And those funds can be used in the same way as this $92 million. We think that that'll be an amount of about $24 million as well. So that's a real quick overview on how it can be used. I'd like to ask Catherine, I know I said a lot there, but if you wouldn't mind just summarizing what's on the slide here about the local assistance, I'd be grateful, and then we'll move on to the next piece.
Sure. La ciudad de Hartford recibirá $92 millones directamente como parte del programa de rescate. Algunos de estos fondos se van a utilizar a través de este año y en los próximos años. Estos fondos podrán ser utilizados hasta el final del año 2024. Algunos de estos fondos corresponden para recobrar los daños de la pandemia COVID-19. El Departamento del Tesoro estará explicando o mostrando sus guías de cómo las municipalidades pueden utilizar estos fondos.
Thank you very much. Now, here's the real discussion for us, and here are the choices that we have. I have here on this slide for us to discuss a number of possible areas where we might use this funding. But before I get to that, I should have I skipped over a last piece, which is a critical piece, because I thought it was on this next slide, and that is the City Council and I will be working together to develop a plan for how these funds need to be used. The City Council and I, the Treasurer along with us, we will all be working together and establishing a process that is clear, that is transparent, that is collaborative, where we are making joint decisions on how these resources can best be spent in our community. It's possible that process will sort of track our budget process in the next couple of months, even though these funds will not be part of our city budget. These funds are outside of our city budget, but it may track our budget process as we go forward. And that's something that we'll be working together with the council on to just make sure that we have a common agreement on the process and all of that. But the most important thing is that we're all working together and all want to hear from our community about how we can best use these resources. So back to the conversation about how this money can be used. Some of the things that we're thinking about, and this list reflects conversations I've had with members of the City Council and the Treasurer, with folks in the community at large, and it's also just based on the needs that we know are out there, include categories like youth services and support, Yes, the Hartford Public Schools is getting a lot of money for education, but we also want to make sure that we're supporting our kids outside the classroom and getting them re-engaged, whether it's in athletics or in whatever they're passionate about, music, arts, computer science, chess, anything. We want to make sure that we're supporting our kids as they recover from this. Community safety. Now, I mentioned that last fall, like a lot of cities across the country, we saw a really serious spike in gun violence. And although it's complicated to understand, I don't know that anybody in the country can tell you that they understand exactly what was driving that. We know that the changes that this pandemic has made to every aspect of our lives continue. And we've got to do everything we can to prepare for this summer and make sure that we're keeping our community safe. And that doesn't just mean police. That means working with our community organizations that are out there doing violence interruption. Potentially, it means things like expanding the work of our reentry welcome center, and working closely with our hospitals as they deal with victims of gun violence. So a number of things that could potentially be dealt with under the category of community safety. Health and wellness. Now, that doesn't just include responding to the coronavirus. We know this bill also includes a bunch of resources for the vaccination effort. So that's outside of this local money. We're going to be doing that anyway. But health and wellness more generally, what do we have to do to try to build a healthier community? Arts and culture. You know, arts and culture have taken a huge hit over the last year as people can't gather, but that's going to be a critical part of our recovery as a community, both economically and just psychologically. So maybe that's an area where we want to devote some resources. Small business support and activation, helping our small businesses that are already operating get back on their feet, make investments they need to make to operate as well as they can coming out of this pandemic, and maybe helping to incentivize and partner to get more businesses growing jobs, activating vacant space throughout our city. So those are some things that we might be considering. And then economic development in general, you know, the kind of neighborhood economic development that can not just create jobs in the near term, but hopefully change the way our city looks and feels going forward for many years. This is that big question mark about how we're able to spend those funds on economic development. But I think one thing that I've heard from a number of council members and from a lot of others is as much as we have to respond to the crisis in front of us right now, let's see if we can also use these resources in a way that have a lasting impact, that aren't just spent, you know, today and then are gone, but continue to make a difference in our community for years and years to come. So economic development may be an area where we can really get some significant things done that we've long aspired to do as a city. And then lastly, you know, potentially some investments in critical infrastructure. You know, this is something that it may not sound as exciting, but you know, we have a really complicated flood control system in this city that's aging, and you know, maybe this gives us a chance to make some investments to help shore that up. That's another thing we may have to think about. This is not a comprehensive list. These are just some ideas of the categories of spending that have come up in conversations, and that we will likely be considering in the weeks and months ahead. You know, we may add to this list, we may remove from this list. But what I want everybody who's watching tonight to know is we want your feedback on this. And so we've actually created a survey. It's bilingual. It's on our city website at hartfordct.gov. And we welcome your input on how you would prioritize these potential categories of spending, and also any other things that are important to you, things that you think are critical to our community's recovery coming out of this pandemic. So let me pause there, and Catherine, ask you just to summarize this slide, and then we'll go into conversation and questions.
¿Cómo será utilizado este dinero? Este dinero será utilizado en categorías como escuelas, seguridad para la comunidad, salud y bienestar, arte y cultura, apoyo a los pequeños negocios y a su reactivación, desarrollo económico, inversión en infraestructura. Esta no es una lista completa de todas las categorías de interés. Nos interesa mucho conocer su opinión, así que hemos creado una encuesta que usted puede responder en la página hartfordct.gov. Nos interesa conocer su opinión. Gracias.
Thank you so much, Catherine. And now we're going to move on to the next part of the conversation. But what I'd like to do first is one, I wanted to reiterate how you can ask questions. So you can do it by Zoom. If you're on Zoom, you can type in your question. If you're watching on Facebook Live, you can ask your question through Facebook Live. And if you're watching on Hartford Public Access TV, or if it's just easier for you, you can email the question as well to broninoffice@hartford.gov. That's broninoffice@hartford.gov, and we'll pick up that email, and the team here will get that question over to us. So I'd like to ask if any of our panelists have anything that they'd like to add before we open this up to questions from our community. And again, we have a number of our council members here, as well as our city treasurer and Congressman Larson. And so if anybody would like to add anything before we open it up for conversation, please, by all means.
Mayor Shirley Surgeon.
Yes, Councilwoman.
I just want to thank you and Congressman Larson for putting together this town hall, because, you know, you read information and in the current and everything else, and people are saying, you know, what are we going to do? We're getting this money. When is it coming? We do know that the first $1,400 that started coming out last week, people have received their funds, you know, in their either checking account or however they filed with their taxes. But one of the things also is it was a really good outline of, you know, the additional funds, this once in a generational amount of money that I grew up in Hartford, I've never seen before, to be given to us by the federal government. So I just want to thank Congressman Larson again, you know, and the Hartford delegation for doing this. But this is a great beginning outline. You know, I think it summarizes, you know, a wealth of information for everyone in our community that can participate and take part, you know, in this outline and give ideas. So I'm really hoping that people in the community would talk up, you know, and give their ideas and their opinions, you know, and not wait until we decide something and then, you know, saying, well, we didn't know. So I pledge, Mayor, to work with you to go out there, you know, and just as much as we did so much work in pounding the pavement, you know, to get people tested, now to get them vaccinated, we need to do the same amount of work to go out and educate our people of, you know, this income that's coming in and let them know where they can go and get some help. So again, thank you for inviting me to the town hall, and thank Congressman Larson again for a tremendous job. Very well done, sir. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Councilwoman. Councilman LeBron?
Yes, so I want to echo and piggyback the sentiments from my colleague, Councilwoman Surgeon, on Congressman Larson's diligent effort and concerted effort to make sure that, you know, that we're taken care of here in Hartford. We appreciate that. And Mayor, for providing, you know, a detail as to what the plans are. But in specific to questions, is there possibilities to create collaborative opportunities? Number one, for example, with the Board of Ed, and number two, with the county money, is there collaborative opportunities across counties? I know Congressman Larson, you represent, you know, the First District, but you know, in terms of opportunities where we can cross-collaborate, I know there are interests and different avenues that, you know, the county itself can be helpful in. And so just wondering if there was any conversation or discussion around that, or thoughts moving forward around that in order where all the cities can pitch in and create some vested opportunities across city lines.
Councilman, I think that's a great question. I mean, certainly we want to work hand in hand with the school system, and I think the nearest opportunity to do that is for this summer. You know, as I know you know, the Hartford Public Schools is building their summer school program, the summer learning program, and we're trying to work together with a whole range of youth serving organizations in the city to make sure that we're in sync with them and you know, linking up the after school recreational enrichment side of things with what the Hartford Public Schools system is doing. So I think for absolutely there. The county idea is a really interesting idea. You know, the money is getting distributed just on a basis of population. So we'll be getting funds solely based on population. But, you know, it's a great question about whether we can work with our surrounding towns to say, do we want to pool those resources in some way to achieve a common objective? And, you know, that's something that we should discuss further as we go. But thanks for those comments, Councilman. Yeah, Majority Leader Clark.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for extending the invite to attend this town hall meeting. Congressman Larson, it's always a pleasure to be in your presence, sir. Thank you for your leadership and your advocacy. A couple of questions regarding the buckets, the categories that you laid out. Will you be hosting additional town hall meetings regarding those industries that fall into the buckets? And I'm just interested in understanding a little bit clearer as to where does the faith-based community fall in regarding this, regarding the outreach. And I'm not sure if the congressman will be able to speak to if there are any monies in the American Rescue Plan that is could be identified for the faith-based communities, because they did receive a significant impact as well as the outreach that they typically do.
Luke,
Congressman, please go right ahead.
Sure. Well, first, thank you for the question, and let me say, you may have heard the mayor when he was describing this. I think someone described it the other day as it was written kind of vaguely, and there are specific things that you can't do, and that has to do with legacy costs, you know, paying for pensions, et cetera, and lowering taxes. But outside of that, and again, the mayor set up, along with Senators Blumenthal and Murphy, a little seminar roundtable that we had back in January to talk about the need in terms of distribution, especially as it relates to vaccinations and monies. Oftentimes are far better achieved by the faith-based community because of their contact and people's, no pun intended here, faith in their ability to make sure that they understand it's in their best interest health-wise and others. So yes, there is broad flexibility within the legislation intended, quite frankly, and I wish, you know, this was something that you could put on national public television. This kind of listening to the mayor talk, listening to the interest on the part of the council, the very intelligent questions. These are the kinds of questions that I guarantee are being asked all across the country. But I think the thoughtful process that you have laid out here and paying attention to making sure that you want to dot the I's and cross the T's, but by the same token, remain flexible, I think there's going to be great opportunity. I always tend to lean towards flexibility, and so would not be a strict constructionalist, as they say, but and I think because communities can best work that out and solve itself, I think your idea with counties also has a lot of merit to it as well.
And Councilman, I just add, you know, this is something that we need to work on together, right? As myself and the council, and figure out where we think those resources can best make a difference. But I think that faith institutions can absolutely be part of that conversation. Treasurer Cloud.
Mr. Mayor, Congressman, thank you both, Luke, for hosting this and inviting me to participate in this historic discussion. Congressman, for your leadership. You know, oftentimes the great works don't get recognized until far after they're done. And I just want to say to you, given the fact that I've known your service and what you've done for many years for the 1st District, this is a resounding impact for our community that without your leadership would not be as large as it is. And so thank you deeply on behalf of the city of Hartford for all that hard work you've done. I'm so happy to see my colleagues on council here, because this is, as the congressman suggested, we haven't seen something of this scale since the New Deal. And I just want to stress two small points. One is that we have to be diligent, dot our I's, cross our T's, or better, plan our work and then work our plan, because the level of money that's coming in can impact generationally the future of the city of Hartford. And so with an emphasis, I think, on our small businesses, because in addition to COVID, we know there has been bias historically when it comes to lending and granting opportunity for small businesses, but there is no community without our small businesses. And so we have to strengthen our community. And one piece, Mayor, I know you and I talked about, is we also ought to spend some time marketing the city of Hartford so that not only our residents, but regionally we are recognized as the shining jewel on top of the hill that we are. And that emphasis will mean more feet on the street and maybe more residents in the city of Hartford, which subsequently translate to taxes, which makes all of us better off.
Well said.
Thanks, Treasurer Cloud. Absolutely. Agreed. We have a few questions that have come in, so maybe just try to address those real quick, and then we can, jump back and forth between additional panelist comments and things that we get in from the community. One of the questions is just a simple question of when will the city be receiving these funds? And the answer to that is half of the funding will come in about 60 days. The other half will come a year from now. So about a year from now, we'll have all of that funding in the city, in an account in the city. But again, we have 3.5 years to spend those resources. And I think that's one of the key questions we're going to have to wrestle with, myself and the council and the treasurer and our community as a whole, is given that we have urgent needs to help our community recover, we know we need to spend resources now. On the other hand, we also want to make sure that we're not just setting something up that vanishes 6 months or a year from now. We want to do some things that are sustained. So we're going to have to balance those two things of the urgency of what we've got to do to address this crisis and the fact that we've got the ability under this law to spend some of the resources over 3.5 years so that the impact is felt over a longer time. So that's one thing. One of the other questions we got here is, will some of the money go for special education? And I think that the answer to that is certainly yes, although the money that will be going for special education would be coming out of the resources that are going to the Hartford Public Schools, the $127 million that are going to the school system. I know that the superintendent and the board are particularly focused on the impact that this pandemic has had on our students with special needs. And so I am also confident that they're going to be dedicating resources to giving extra support to those students who have those needs. And actually, Catherine, if you wouldn't mind just translating that last piece, I think that's also particularly important for, for folks, everybody to hear.
Hay una pregunta que ¿cuándo se van a recibir esos fondos? Esos fondos se van a recibir en 60 días a partir de hoy y algunos otros fondos se van a recibir dentro del próximo año.
Another question that we've gotten is, will there be safeguards in place to make sure the funding is going to what and where it's designated for? And it adds, given how the Republicans are very good at spreading lies and will be looking at anything to cause a scandal, I'm sure you're right about that. I'm sure they're going to be looking for any dollar that they think is misspent. But what I can tell you is we're going to be transparent about the process we have for allocating those dollars, and we're going to be transparent about reporting on how those dollars are spent. And I think fortunately, as we just went through, there's pretty wide latitude for us to use these funds in ways that are absolutely within the intended purpose of this law and that make a huge difference in our community. That's what we're going to be looking to do. So we'll be fully transparent in every aspect of this process, developing the plan, and then reporting on those expenditures. And I'm sure that we expect this stuff to be audited, just like our city books are audited every year. I'm sure that there will be an inspector general who's looking at how the funds are spent on the federal level, and we welcome that because we are looking forward to using this funding in exactly the way it's meant to be used. Congressman, you wanted to add something?
Yeah, I just wanted to add something. And if you had any doubt about it, I think, between Janet Yellen and also Secretary Powell as well, you have two sources on the outside that have indicated both the amount of money that we get criticized for. And that's why I gave that example at the outset. This was $1.9 trillion. Don't forget that our erstwhile colleagues on the other side in 2017 passed $2 trillion in tax cuts, unpaid for, that are going to be picked up by future generations, where 83% of the taxes went to 1% of the people. That stands in stark contrast to, as the mayor has said, and the Treasurer Cloud has said, and councilors you have acknowledged, this is New Deal-esque in that this money goes directly back to people, both by way of direct deposits in their accounts, but also back to the very communities that are going to decide how to best use this money. Do not be embarrassed at all. Be unabashedly proud that you were listened to, and the money is going to be directed to the people the way it should be. Sorry, I get a little charged up when I hear that stuff, but have to say it.
Thank you, Congressman, and understandably so, and well said. Couple other questions. One of the questions, and to the other panelists, again, please feel free to jump in on any of these questions if you have things that you want to add to what's asked. So one of the questions is the governor, working with city leaders to coordinate statewide investments? In other words, is each municipality working in silos to spend their individual allocations? So I think the truth is the answer is yes and yes. There are a lot of resources in this bill that go through the state and to the state. And the governor has been a tremendous partner with us throughout this pandemic, particularly when it comes to testing and vaccines and all of that work responding to the crisis. And I think we have every reason to think that, as the state level, they develop the plan for spending state resources, they're going to be doing that together with us. And it's important to say it's not just the governor, it's also our state legislators. And I know that our state delegation in Hartford is very, very much involved in those discussions. And we'll be representing the interests of Hartford, but also of communities like Hartford. And so, I think that there will be lots of opportunity for partnership with the governor, with our legislators, with the state in general, as the state uses its resources and develops their budget this year. At the same time, the funding that is coming to us at the local level, that is for us to use as we think best for our community. And, I think that's as appropriate. As Congressman said, we know the needs of our community best, and we can balance among lots of different competing priorities to try to make these dollars have the biggest impact and the most long-lasting impact possible for our city.
Mayor, may I?
Yes, Councilwoman.
Thank you. First of all, thank you, Congressman Larson. And I must say, I appreciate seeing that picture of you and Elliot behind you on your desk. He's sorely missed. Such a wonderful person. I see one of the questions, Mayor, and I know this is a focus for you, but I feel it's important to bring it up, that we really continue to focus on neighborhood economic development and how we continue to grow small developers. I know there are obstacles at times, and I think we owe that to them to really figure out how to keep moving them along. So I'd really like to see how that piece can be a part of all of this. So thank you.
Thanks, Councilwoman. I agree 100%. And just to read that full question that you're referring to, the question was, will the community have a chance to be part of the economic development discussions in the neighborhoods? Is there any opportunity for public and private partnerships, especially for smaller developers? And I think the answer is there absolutely. I mean, absolutely to the first question, and no reason why it shouldn't be for the second question. Now, I'm going to take this quick opportunity to just talk about neighborhood economic development discussions. And number one, just give a general plug for folks. If you're not already involved in your NRZ, your neighborhood revitalization zone, please get involved. That's the entity that represents your neighborhood. When we talk about what we're going to be doing in a neighborhood, the NRZ is the first group we go to, City Council and I both, to say, what are your priorities? And if there's a particular project, come in and say, what do you think about that? So I do just want to give a general plug. If you're not already involved in your NRZ, but you care about what's happening in your neighborhood, please get involved. And a number of our NRZs are in the process of and beginning the process of neighborhood planning, updating their neighborhood plans. And we as a city are supporting those efforts through our planning department to support the work of our NRZs in updating the visions for their neighborhood that in some cases are a decade old. So that's another way that you can get involved. But the last thing I'd say is, I also encourage you, if you haven't done it already, to take a look at the city plan that was recently published just last year. It was the product of a lot of engagement with a lot of different groups throughout the community in every neighborhood. And it also identified some key economic development priorities. Among those, it highlighted 10 what the plan calls transformational projects throughout the city. And they're all around the city, those 10. So I encourage you to take a look at those, because it may be that some of this funding that we get gives us an opportunity to move the ball forward on some of those transformational projects that we otherwise wouldn't have been able to move quite so quickly on. So I'm not trying to get ahead of things. A lot of conversation about whether that's where we want to go, but just since the question was asked about, the community being part of those development discussions, I want to make sure one, there is a plan that was produced with a lot of community input that is sitting there that we're working to implement. Two, the NRZs are working on their neighborhood plans and we'll listen to them. And three, get involved if you're not already involved in that NRZ. And I'm looking to see, why don't I just see if anybody on the panel wants to add anything either to that or to anything else that we've hit on so far?
I do have a quick question, specifically for the role in the public health system for community health centers. Has it been determined how much that the community health centers would be receiving from the American Rescue Plan?
That's a great question, Councilman. I believe, and Congressman, I'll let you speak to this. I believe that the American Rescue Plan has, aside from the state and local funding, has funds specifically designated for federally qualified health centers. I'm not 100% sure, but Congressman, maybe you can speak to that. $7
billion is what we've been told, but I think also because of the role increasingly that they are playing, I think there's going to be opportunities to further expand that, but clearly they have been designated already in the American Rescue Plan, and although not all of the community health centers were brought into it, but I think most, if not all, of Hartford's are.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Yep.
Congressman, I know one of our FQHCs, and Councilman Clark can probably speak more to this, but worth just taking a quick minute on this. I know that one of our FQHCs is, I think, an FQHC lookalike, which means that it doesn't fully benefit from the resources that are able to be accessed by FQHCs. So, maybe that's something that we can work together on to see if there's. Terrific. Thank you.
I think that's the great thing about a call like this, is that you always get more information, and I mean this sincerely. I think if people were listening to this town hall that you're having here, I mean, this is how a democracy should work. and you get added information. Fortunately, we're here talking in a very positive way about the amount of resources that are coming in. But you're talking about spending those resources in the area that they're needed with the input from every aspect of the community that will help make that more productive, more efficient, and get to the people who need it the most. And I commend all of you. This has been terrific. My only wish was that Counselor Surgeon told her story again, which made my day yesterday about her neighbor who she happened to oversee, who got her check. I mean, it was just, if that doesn't bring a little tear to your eye, I don't think much will.
Really? Oh, okay. I'll share the story again. Beautiful warm day we have on Sunday, and we're out doing yard work, the first great warm day we've had in the city. And my neighbors, they went shopping. They received their stimulus check last week. And what was catching for me was basically there were two cars that pulled up in front of my gate, and she comes out and, wave and say hi. And the second car, her son comes out. Her son comes out of the car, and they begin to unpack groceries. These are two SUVs filled of groceries. They're unpacking, and her landlord says, "Lots of food." And she says, "Yes, I've got my government check." And they continue unpacking the groceries, leaving it, on the porch. And then, she has two young kids, and they ran down the stairs. And the little boy says, "Mommy, we've got food." So that to me was the most heart-wrenching event that I've seen, that I know what you have worked for, Congressman Larson. This is exactly what it did. It put money in people's pocket who went and spent the money in the economy.
Made my evening.
That's just heart-wrenching. But I do have a question that came over on my email, Mayor. The question was, one of your big talking point was arts and culture, and we have such wonderful parks in the city. Are you thinking of doing or putting any funds, because the winter and COVID did a job on the parks and maintaining our parks and utilizing the parks for the community safety and health and wellness?
So that's a great question. Thanks for passing that along, Councilwoman. So I think that this may be one of the areas where we need to wait for the guidance from the Treasury Department, because what the law says, and Congressman Larson, feel free to jump in, but what the law says is that you can spend, it specifically names certain types of infrastructure spending. So it names water, sewer, and broadband. And sometimes if a bill specifically names certain types of things you can spend the money on, it means that you can't spend it on other types of infrastructure. So we may need to wait to see what the Treasury Department says about that. But there's no question that even beyond the rescue funds, we have tried to continue making improvements and upgrades to our parks. There's some work going on in our parks. Construction will be happening in a number of our parks this summer. Over the past couple of years, the treasurer and the council and I have worked together using Parks Trust Fund resources to make some long overdue investments in our parks. And that's in everything from splash pads and playscapes to new fields and baseball fields, soccer fields, making some really important progress towards implementing what's in a lot of our parks plans. So we're going to keep trying to do that regardless of whether we can use the American Rescue Plan funds to do it. And we'll have to wait and see what, how broad that eligible expenditures is when the guidance comes out.
And Mayor, if I may, to add to Shirley's question, I think since 2019, we've spent approximately $6 million from the Hartford Parks Trust Fund, with about $5 or so million left available to be committed to the beautification of our parks. So absolutely support that idea, but I think the mayor's right. We ought to wait for some direction in terms of guidelines, which leads me to a question to the congressman. Congressman, part of my responsibility is to manage the short-term cash of the tax dollars that we receive and then are to be expended. And because we're receiving this federal money, a question begins to come around in my mind is, will there be any restriction around arbitrage for these dollars? So I don't expect you to have that answer, but I may want to talk to you offline about that, about what might the Treasury guidance be around my ability to invest that money and generate an interest income off of that federal money as it sits in our account.
Well, it's a great question, and you're right. I don't have the answer off the top of my head, but I'd be happy to work with you, et cetera. But I think you and the mayor have also got it right with respect to what you were saying about parks, even though, as I've said before, I'm a loose constrictionalist, but the mayor's words are correct as when you see legislation that's written the way this is. However, I would also add, and we had a little bit of this discussion yesterday, is that we also have a $4 trillion infrastructure plan. That's the next item up for Congress in a big way to take up. And obviously, our parks are always considered an integral and critical and key part, et cetera. So I think there will be opportunities, and I think the mayor's words are right, to best do this in a way that the government looks favorably upon cities and entities that are following the letter of the law and doing it and become the examples of how to do it right and how to do it well and how to do it most efficiently and get the best bang for the federal dollars. And I think that Hartford's got every opportunity to demonstrate that. Okay. And I'm going to be there to try to help to make sure that happens.
Thank you so much, Congressman, and you've been one of the most vocal proponents of a ambitious infrastructure bill for years and years, and it's exciting to think that its time may have come, looking forward to working closely with you on that as well. I want to answer one last question that I had accidentally missed and was kind of resubmitted, and then just encourage everyone to fill out the survey, and we'll close out out of respect for everybody's time. But the question is, how will funding be spent in terms of promoting community safety, and specifically talks about beat cops. I assume the meaning like walking beats, saying that helped to reduce violence back in the 80s. So how we spend these dollars is going to be something that we need to work on together in the weeks and months ahead. The council and I, going through that process of laying out the categories of expenditure that we're comfortable with, and then moving forward. We have been increasing the number of walk beats that we have out in the city, even apart from the funding that's coming from the American Rescue Plan. That's something that we would like to continue to do. I agree with the basic point that having officers out of their cars walking the beat makes a big difference. And so we are doing our best to balance that need with the need to have enough officers in patrol cars who are able to respond, as well as making sure that we've got those dedicated investigative units that can solve and follow up and respond appropriately to crimes, particularly crimes of violence, but also the dedicated traffic unit and the dedicated domestic violence unit. So we're trying to balance all those things, but I absolutely share your point to the person asking the question about the importance of walk beats, and that's something we're trying to expand, regardless of whether we're using the American Rescue Plan funds for that purpose. So now, if I can, I'd like to just sorry, I'm just seeing one more question come in. Will any funds be considered to reignite events in the city? I personally believe we should. That's where that bucket of arts and culture comes in. We have an incredible number of annual arts and cultural events that are a part of the fabric of the city, and we want those to come back, and we want them to come back stronger than ever. We want to have jazz in Bushnell Park. We want to have the Jerk Fest. We want to have, even if we don't have a parade, we want to have a celebration of Puerto Rican culture. We want to have, beyond the big festivals in the parks, I think we want to just have some musicians playing on street corners and some artists out there, depicting their city and creating art for our community. So I think those are things that we absolutely want to dedicate some resources to. And again, every one of these things on their own could take up a huge amount of these resources. What we're going to have to do is balance all of the needs that our community has, do our best to prioritize, do our best to think both short-term and longer term, do our best to use these dollars in ways that have an impact now, but then have a lasting impact even beyond these 3 or 4 years if we have a chance to build something that will not just go away when the spending window closes. So I think those are the kinds of things we're going to be thinking about and balancing as we do this together. And again, I'd like to just close by encouraging everybody to please fill out that survey. If you've got thoughts on how you would prioritize the different areas of spending that we highlighted, we want your input on that. If you've got ideas on other things that we should be doing, we want your input on that too. I think that we are going to be careful that we don't, we're not going to use this money just to pump up the city budget if that money is going to be going away in a couple of years. We want to make sure that we're doing things that are sustainable. We're also want to make sure that we're not spreading the money around to so many different priorities that nothing really has a lasting impact. So again, we're going to have a lot of conversations together and a lot of conversations with you, but we want your input now on where your priorities are. So go to hartfordct.gov and fill out the survey that is there. I also want to say that the town hall is being recorded on Facebook Live, and you can rewind it and play it anytime. It's also going to be on Hartford Public Access TV's Facebook. So if you didn't get a chance to watch this whole thing, you can look it up and watch it. We gave a little bit of information earlier on the American Rescue Plan and the funds that are in there and how they can be used. So let me ask Catherine to just translate that encouragement for everyone to fill out our survey at hartfordct.gov, and then we'll bring it to a close.
Bueno, una vez más los invitamos a que contesten nuestra encuesta y participen, denos su opinión. Este evento va a estar grabado, fue grabado y lo pueden volver a ver nuevamente en Facebook Live o en nuestra página web.
Terrific. Thank you so much. Thank you again to all of our panelists. Congressman Larson, thanks for everything you're doing for us down there, day in and day out, year after year. You are the best congressman we could ask for, and really, really grateful to you for your work and for being here. And to all of my colleagues in city government, the council members who are here and the council members who couldn't make it, looking forward to working closely with you as we put these plans together, and Treasurer Cloud likewise. Thank you all, and everyone who's watching, please have a wonderful night. Stay healthy and get that vaccine.
Thanks,
everybody. Take care and God bless.
Bye.